I hereby call to order the November meeting of the Hamilton East Public Board of Trustees. So would you please start with joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag States, one nation, under the justice for all. All right, first I'll ask, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I move to remove item 15.1, the childhood development presentation.
Why?
Second.
All right, I think we'll need a roll call vote on that.
We need discussion.
Okay, discussion. All right.
So I've moved. I don't think sufficient consensus exists for the need for such information. Insufficient lead time and information was provided to the board about the presentation or the presenter. And preliminary research suggests that this presenter would not be qualified to present on this topic and is otherwise too controversial to be honored with the floor at our business meeting.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think he's completely qualified and we should give him a chance to speak. And I mean, we don't have to, you have to agree with what he says, but I think it's worth hearing what he's going to bring. So
I guess I'll add, I haven't just learned about the identity of the speaker earlier today. I know a lot of us work full time. I haven't even really had the opportunity to begin to do due diligence on this. So
Mine with Craig.
Dr. Stock, he's a healthcare professional, he's a doctor. He wanted to share information about childhood development. This is one of the topics that Edra and I have spoken about maybe a couple of months ago, about as we've gone through this collection development policy, we've never had a healthcare professional talk about what children should and should not be exposed to at different times. And this is just something that we've never had any informed consent, any informed ideas about. A lot of our approach to this has been purely legal and constitutional and never took a scientific or medical approach to the developing minds of children. And I think that that's something that's key to this conversation, especially with the recommendation that Michelle has about, looking at what we're having and expanding the child area. And I think that if we give him a chance to share information, we may be able to understand what kind of content is more has more of a negative impact to children versus just focusing on like language or situations. And I just think it's a really good scientific piece that can take us from moving all of these books to focusing in on content that is most likely to have the negative impacts. So that was the hope, is that as we're trying to refine and move closer to a solution, that we would open our minds to some type of medical information about the developing minds of children. But if the Board of Trustees does not want to have any additional information about the developing minds of children and what kind of information they should be exposed to, then I certainly, I'm just one vote.
That was not the point of my motion. The point of my motion was to make clear that, first of all, disagree that we have not received any information. We've received information in multiple stages from public comment, doctors who are patrons, who are pediatricians, individuals who work with children on a day-to-day basis. Had we at a prior meeting talked about, hey, let's bring in a medical professional to present on child psychology and child sexualization? Sure, that's not a conversation this board has had. And I understand that might be a conversation that you had with our library director, but I'm making this motion. I don't think that this meeting today and this presenter is the right thing to do.
Do you
any further discussion?
Do you have a different type of recommendation as to how we can put some type of medical developmental approach to this? I think certainly with the policy that we had created, we found flaws in it. It was overreaching, and we missed the opportunity to to find the things that really have the a negative impact on growing brains and minds. So I think that not having this type of information is I think it's important to have this kind of information. I think this passing on this is not what we should do, but I am but one voice.
But I agree with David.
Any further discussion? And I think we'll need a roll call vote.
The motion to,
We're 15-1.
no.
Sue Pringle? Yes.
No,
Remove, yes, remove. Yeah.
Yes. And Craig Smith?
Aye. All right. All right, motion, all right, thank you. Motion carries. Any other additions or corrections to the agenda before you move forward? Oh, I apologize. We're not using microphones. All right, so we'll now move on to comments from the public. I would like to give members of the public who have signed up to do so the opportunity to speak. We'll limit this portion of the meeting to a total of 30 minutes to enable us to move to our business meeting in a timely manner. So it looks like 5 people signed up to speak, so I will give everyone the full 3 minutes to make their remarks. Please do limit your remarks to 3 minutes. I will also remind everyone that this is a public meeting. We're requiring the highest and best decorum from all attendees. Our meetings will be a safe place where people can share their thoughts and ideas with the board. Absolutely no comments, applause, signs, or outbursts from the gallery or attendees will be permitted. I guess I would reinforce, I know we've had issue with applause before. I understand the reason for it, but it does kind of interfere with the flow of comments and distracts and kind of becomes a competition. So I'd ask you to refrain from applause, please. All right. So our first speaker today is Kara Long. Do we have a timer?
Yes. Yes. I'm Dr. Carol Long. I'm Dr. Carol Long. I'm now relating my comments. So I guess I thank the board for that. It isn't true that we moved from people, we heard from Dr. Beaver, and from himself. I degree in psychology. I went to 4 years of medical school. And did extra rotations in pediatrics and development pediatrics in my post-grad. Then I completed a scholarly project on child abuse. I did a 4-year residency, so I'm a medical center, and I have more than 6 meetings of supervised direct care for children over the hospital. And I mean, basically, my entire team was all involved in human, emotional, psychological, sexuality and sexual development, and the way it's developing, and how it is when it goes on. And I'm also board certified. And yeah, it's not true that the board has heard us, so I have to thank the board for their decision. I would say the child psychiatrist or child psychologist would be serious themselves. They and an expert reading true. So we thank them, and we've been over this and thank the board.
All right, our next speaker is Naomi. I apologize, I mispronounced this, Curling.
is it possible for Edra to move her microphone over there while she's talking?
I don't have a microphone. We're not using the microphones because it makes the Zoom harder.
Okay, because I can't hear the speakers. It's fine.
I would like to know, and before we off with the figure that the board generally tends to be on the second argument. And this will be my attitudes on that the professional that we present some things that are public concern, visible. So I would really appreciate that. So we'll start tonight by asking each board member a simple seven-down question. What do you want to learn your language? Protecting the innocence of children or being implicit in the harm of children? Later in this meeting, as we consider using children access to literature that sexualizes in documents. No, they were making a decision to take their innocent children and put them in the. In addition to speaking about children's literature, I have had several questions on child patient safety and the GPM for the last few months. These are questions that need to be answered, and you have a responsibility to act to protect the innocence of child patients. And to ensure that children are emotion safe, it is my opinion that there are problems in key areas. All short, failure to implement common sense safeguards and lack of state already existing policy. I have studied these questions being immediate path of the state of the children. I understand what is possible. And submitted and the truth. To see if hopefully there are, but it's not, and then the rest of them are related. In my experience, there are one educator. I also get what I want someone to like them. So that in the of the children will be implicit and harming. Tonight, and then if you're truly listening to people.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Logan.
The one making a decision based on comment, emails, conversations with the community, neighborhoods, educators, city, is not. So public comments are frequently limited to minutes, so not everybody consistent. So that was our process, so going on to that's a fact. So there were movements and we were all at the same time. And no one getting there, but we all minutes were made. Everyone's completely removed. It's just for the next anyway, that's an email. That's also not relevant because I'm confident there's board members that would have decisions different and we have different. District also is not fairly represented on this board. We have 6-1. Group here, we have one person, Logan Fisher, Western Noblesville, and Fisher Federal populations. Also, the sample size that was listed in the agenda was 3190. That's not high enough for a 71,000 population. If you want to do that, 3% of the harvest, the sample size will be over 5,000 people. And do you really want the sample size? Look at what happened last year in the election. 20,000 people in Fisher, 12,000 in Noblesville showed up to vote. The conservative vote, they have the 9 contested positions. The Fisher's city councilwoman, Jocelyn Bear, she was defeated by 3 conservatives, including Tiffany Ellison, who is now going to be the city council. That was in despite the all sides was the media about Tiffany. Jocelyn had been in the previous meeting, and she stated how she wanted to be part he said should be moved. She said, so Fisher voted overwhelmingly against this level of agenda. It was noted that people wanted to stop doing censorship of books, which I didn't think was even happening here, so I thought that was an interesting comment. And also the attorneys to confirm that what moving books were not censorship was the beginning. But we did have 466 people that said they didn't want to change anything when we wanted a reflection on what's participating in that. They didn't respond, however you want to hear. Does not does not support the conclusions of the and I request that you thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephanie Hunt.
Well, I was offered a job that was in FBA and I was able to leave. Now, I knew that was what was good on future job applications and resumes. But I needed to left it off. So I was to take ownership of my own activity. Does that show any integrity? No. To me, that there are people on the board who have started their position. Publicly touted their engagement and passionate but let the role not and how proud they were of their role in creating and supporting that all so it's not just opinion. And we have 0 in for a presentation about childhood development in the person promoting a specialized pediatric food. As my friend was planning the team, she has spoken to many times and offers professional science-based advice. It is not our fault. We are here that side. Maybe Dr. Fox should have seen that with his great instead of having being hidden or everyone until the end. As shown in the numbers, it has been brought up in previous meetings that we weren't sure who the majority was. But it really did. Well, now we do. The people who actually use the library and have to bring their kids to enjoy these resources is telling you exactly what some of them don't want to hear. Applications do not want this policy. I support the recommendations brought forward in the self-pay week.
Thank you. Our final speaker this evening is Marianne Grastik. I apologize.
So. So, members of the board, thank you for being Steve. I appreciate your time. We appreciate all of the active listening that's going on here. And we'll get into point out a couple of things. You made a comment or something that you want that a medical experience. Well, I'm different than the pediatric experience. So, you know, some of the things that you've heard laws and you just need to have, you keep your ears open. Second of all, as far as the question that came up during the discussion about whether it affects children as far as what they read, actually visual experience is actually more natural to children. So seeing violence is more important to a child than reading about violence. And reading about violence actually gives them a chance to try to kind of figure it out, have a discussion with their parents. So those are things that are important, and we kind of really see that with this collection policy. I just want to point out the lovely summary that was done that talks about all of the things that need to be done as far as kids. And one of the suggestions was that because we constantly the policy that really pushed home that parents responsible for their own children and what they read, not parents. We moved out to other people in the library, but parents and take custodians of those children, they're responsible for what their child reads. I like my child, my children, or did at the time, we're not adults, we adults, we talk about the books that we read, because it's a way of learning. It's a way of actually absorbing things in a healthy way, and loving, as opposed to seeing something that they can't understand is happening. So it is important to put the budget policy back in. We allow the teens to read books that are meant for teens so that they can actually explain the world around them and be ready for adulthood. This does not mean that the book or something that has succeeded isn't a lot of success. It doesn't mean that they read about the it does not mean that if they read a book that has alcohol in it, that they're going to drink alcohol. It doesn't mean that if they're reading a book about suicide, that they're going to suicide. It means that it allows them to understand their feelings, understand the world around them. And to say, that all of this started when members of the board, some of them here, decided to take it upon themselves to police what people read, to police what is in the environment around us. And I think that they're going to change everything that people coming into the library see and do. That's not what it's for. It is for First Amendment peace. It is for the ability to be able to learn. And by moving those books away from the teenagers, we are taking away from the chance to go and actually learn. And putting them in learning in different adult books that do not belong to be touched by those teens until they're ready for it and they become decided.
All right, thank you for everyone who came out to speak this evening. I will now move on.
And then, if I can make a comment, the doctor just showed up, is here. Can we give him a chance to do a public comment? For 3 minutes, we got.
Right. So, hey, all right, everybody. All right, so here's how I view this. If we open it up. So, hey. Here's how I view this. If we open it up to one person, we have to open it up to more people. So I can see a show of hands, or is there more than one person here who has not spoken already that would want to speak?
Maybe it's not a shame.
All right, then I'll put it to the board. Do we have a motion to allow to open it back up?
I move to open it back up.
Excuse me, you're interfering with the operation of the board. We have a motion on the table. Is anyone seconding it?
I second.
Right, and I believe we'll need a roll call. Discussion. And discussion.
I think I mean, he's here, give him 3 minutes, just like everyone else. I mean, what could it hurt? Freedom of speech, right?
It's
Oh, freedom of speech. Okay, only when it's the other side. I got it.
I think that giving him 3 minutes.
Any further discussion?
Can nobody hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I think giving him 3 minutes is fair. He's a practicing doctor. He just got there. We had meetings in the past where we asked people if they want to speak. I remember where President Allerding asked if there was anybody else. Another man moved to speak. We're definitely ahead of schedule. I don't think him 3 minutes is going to derail our agenda, and it's probably fair.
All right, any further discussion on this motion? All right, time for a roll call vote. Aye.
Stephanie?
Roll call.
Aye, yes.
Canada?
Aye.
And I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Aye. Shelley? Aye. And Craig?
Aye. Dr. Dan Stock. All right, Dr. Stock, you missed the portion where we went over the rules, but if you'd like to speak during public comment, you're permitted to right now. You have 3 minutes like the other members of the public who signed up.
We have to speak in 5 minutes after something's been done.
The agenda has been amended, so if you would like the option to speak tonight, you can speak now for 3 minutes.
Good.
I don't know, okay. I would have to speak some, your chief of, impulse control and I just have to speak about impulse control and, neuropsychiatric pain and how it's working, library responding. Which is basic understanding that people have to have a stimulus response. There are certain stimuli that are extremely addictive, and if you don't understand that, I'm reading for the next 3 minutes while I speak, and then find that you can't do it. If you're a simple organism like a fish, you can not pretty much organize on how to handle all the stimuli as they come in. But when you're a complex organism like a human, controlling things like temperature, food, water, and air are things that you are taught. If you don't believe me, set a kid into a kitchen with candy and vegetables and see which one he eats more. He won't stop the candy before he's injured himself. This is because there are genetic bounds on what we are able to do to their stimuli and regulate those stimuli which have addictive potentials without injuring ourselves within those genetic bounds. Any creature like a human, that is actually instruction that is given to the child through its training, primarily organized by its parents. But the problem is this is extremely variable training. There are many, many variables that we cannot measure. Some that we can measure, the measures are not valid. So the only person who can more accurately than anyone else predict how long you can give a new stimulus to somebody who is highly addicted, will they be able to integrate that stimulus in a way that is not harmful to that individual child? Unfortunately, because the only person who sees that child in all different situations and knows the previous chain of training, the led to the association of impulse control of that child is the parent. There's no way that anybody who's a librarian, teacher, a senator, or anyone in government can do that as accurate. Because of these complex interactions, if you present a new stimuli, only addicted nature, to someone who has not learned the stimulus control of greed and nature to handle that stimuli, you can start to see untoward things that then lead to injury because they are not within the genetic bounds that organism is designed to handle. So one of the most addictive things that happens in human beings is orgasm. And unfortunately, that requires impulse control to be learned as well. And it's probably even more difficult to integrate that learning than it is with something like temperature control. What we have seen is we've gone to public education and exposure and sex education, where this information is presented to a child at a one-size-fits-all variety, without the instruction and the government by the parent who can say this child is ready for that information, but not for this information. This information can only be presented in this way to this child at this time. There's a rise of things that are actually harmful within the genetic bounds of that child if we've done this very non-specific one-size-fits-all exposure for things that would lead to orgasm, including an increase in teen blood intent.
Yeah, time.
Including an increase in child.
I'm sorry, sir. Thank you for your comments. All right. All right, we've now concluded public comment. I'll move to the consented. Make it more quiet down, please. Thank you. Okay, now move from public comment. I'm going to go to the consent agenda. All right, Deborah, please be respectful and let's continue with the meeting. Thank you. All right. All right, so any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? All right, then I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All vote please.
Thank you. Aye. Tiffany?
Aye.
Bill Kim?
Aye.
Uncle?
Aye.
Michelle? Okay, aye. And Travis?
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right, motion carried. I'll now move on to the claims and warrants. So I will accept a motion for approval of the claims and warrants. We can move to discussion.
I'll move to approve the claims and warrants.
Second.
All right, any questions or discussion now? All right, no discussion, then I will move to a roll call vote.
Rega,
Aye.
Sue Grayson,
Tiffany?
Tiffany.
We need to hear it. She didn't come to the.
We need to hear for you to say it. You have to actually say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, oh, it's kind of.
Aye.
Thank you. John Ray.
Aye.
Swayze Michelle.
Aye.
And Craig Steve.
Aye. All right, motion carried. I will now move on to the Long Range Planning Committee report. So I'll hand it over to Michelle, who is the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee.
Thank you. I'm going to read a report from our most recent committee meeting. The Long Range Planning Committee met on November 1st at the Noblesville branch of HEPL. Members are Craig, Tiffany, and myself. Edra and Amber Wright were also present, along with our strategic planning partner, Garrett Mason. Garrett reviewed with us and answered several questions about a comprehensive summary report of findings from community listening sessions, the broad-based survey conducted this summer, and other mechanisms used to gather data and feedback. Results led to multiple discoveries as described in the 3-page strategic plan document included in tonight's packet. As you can see, our mission, vision, and guiding principles remain intact. It is the key strategic priorities that lead us to new and exciting opportunities for HEPL. By focusing on access, community, engagement, and capacity, a large system can continue to advance, innovate, and grow for our patrons. This strategic plan is intended to span 5 years through 2028. There's plenty of work for this board to do. If we are able to shift our focus to a higher level and support the library leadership and staff to complete the ambitious goals identified. Among them are increased per capita usage, partnering with other organizations on programs, establishing a foundation, and exploring a third branch location.
Any questions or comments on Michelle's report?
Is there any talk about where that third branch would be, or is that just?
We do own property currently at 151st and Oleo.
56 and Oleo.
156 in Oleo. So we did discuss in the committee conducting a feasibility study to see if that location would support match.
56.
It's right by a fire station and about a mile north of where the new Pacers event center will be. Out on the west side. It's by Rua.
What's your, as a director, what's your thoughts on that?
I like that location because it is, it kind of makes a triangle for in our service area for where the library is in. So it would improve access to people that live in Saxony and that kind of area. And the area, but I think it's something that we definitely.
What's our process from here on long range planning? This is obviously a draft of the strategic plan.
Yes.
Next steps.
So our plan at this point is to continue to, if the board is by consensus feels pretty good about these priorities, we're going to continue to flesh that out and then bring a more finalized document to the December meeting to approve, and that'll be the framework, and then we will build on that with specific activities and measurables that as we go, so that we can report back to the board on that. So we'll have something next month to approve for us to start working on 2024.
Any further comment? All right, I will now move to our 2024 schedule of closed days and board meetings. I'll accept a motion for approval of the 2024 schedule of closed days, all days, and board meetings. I'll second it. All right, do we have any questions or discussion on that motion? All right, if there's no discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Michael Beckler,
Aye.
Sue Crandall, aye. Tiffany Dixon. Hey,
Yeah.
Billy Henley,
Aye.
Andre Nation,
Aye.
Michelle Kane,
I,
and Craig Z.
Aye. All right, I will now move on to the annual approval of the internet and computer use policy. All right, so the library requires annual approval of this policy. I'll accept a motion for its approval, and I guess I'll just add that, actually, I'll take the motion first, then we can comment.
I'm going to approve it.
Second.
All right, now that we're in discussion, I guess I think we reviewed this recently and there weren't any changes. I thought it looked pretty solid.
It was updated last.
It was, okay, yeah, updated last December, so.
And we moved some of the language in line with some of our other policies, to kind of clean it up a little. So,
All right, so any further discussion on the policy? All right, then I'll call for a roll call vote.
Michael Beckler,
Aye.
Sue Crandall, aye. Billy Henley,
Aye.
Andre Nation,
Aye.
Michelle Kane,
I,
and Craig Z.
Aye. All right, motion carried. I will now move on to the 2024 salary schedule. To get discussion going, I will accept the motion for approval of the 2024 salary schedule and 4 included exceptions. All right, I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, do we have any questions or discussion on the salary schedule?
I have a question about the merit increase, merit matrix. Will we be able to finalize all of that by, well, when do you anticipate completing the process and making the awards? I saw a little bit of a blurb in the director's report, but is all of that on schedule? And when do you anticipate people getting their awards?
So that, yes, the merit matrix implementation is on schedule. We're working through performance reviews of all staff. That will be completed by December 1st. We'll then provide the performance information to partners at NFP who will put it into the formulas that create those performance-based increases. And we anticipate having that back from them in time to put that information into our system, and those will be effective as of January 1st.
Okay. Fantastic. And then I noticed that we've hired some folks recently. How will they kind of factor into the merit matrix? Is there like a minimum amount of time someone needs to be on staff, or is there just a
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, the cutoff date for being eligible for performance-based pay is being hired by July 1. So anyone who's hired after that will not be eligible until the following year. However, we do age the ranges 2% per year to stay competitive. And even though those staff are not eligible for performance-based pay, that goes into the matrix calculation so that no one falls below of the new ranges. So that's all factored into the evaluator criteria.
That's great. So they're not penalized. Okay, that's great. Thank
Correct.
you.
I guess I'll just add for the benefit of those who've joined the board since last time we've done this. I know we have those kind of exceptions, and those are the staff that have maxed out on the annual increases, but we want to recognize their contribution and tenure, so we give them a lump sum payment.
Yeah, so typically, and I'll have more information about that at the next meeting, because we'll know how they fit into the merit matrix. But their salaries are listed on here separately because they are outside of those ranges. And the board last year, and has in the past, when we factor them into the merit matrix, we'll have a number, and then that would be a one-time salary adjustment that will not go to base pay because they're already above that range. But the board approves those separately.
All right, then I will, I guess, move to a roll call vote if there's no further comments. All right, roll call vote, please.
Okay, Michael Beckler,
Aye.
Sue Crandall, aye. Tiffany Dixon,
Aye.
Andre Leisha,
Aye.
Michelle Keith. David Griggs.
Aye. All right, the motion has carried. Now I'll turn things over to Kevin McCurdy for our project update.
All right. Good evening. Thank you, everybody. I think everybody hopefully received a report. You're saying that nods. They have a yes from everyone. I'll just briefly kind of talk on maybe things that have changed even in the last week, because as with projects, things are kind of continuously changing. In terms of changes, we'll start there with pictures and we'll kind of follow this down. In terms of changes, regarding actual financial changes, on the project, we're kind of in the final row of one here that we're negotiating out those for phase 1 and phase 2, a couple of final additions and subtractions. So just as a general statement, we're going to be in the process of trying the next 2 weeks of another reconciliation of the overall budgets for projects, just to make sure everything's fitting. And with some of these kind of smaller items, do we accept them as changes? Do we have absolutely nothing to do that or not? But on the whole, we still believe that we're on budget for the project. I guess the general statement. But not a lot necessarily that wasn't anticipated. I think we're change for the last time. Yeah, you'll see none of it that executed and change orders yet. We'll improve that. In terms of the big change here, but we probably saw it was kind of south parking lot. Even though it has the appearance of being done and it is like 99% done, it's still closed off just because we want to get that south entrance done, because obviously once the parking lot opens, people start migrating there naturally. That's the transition from really phase 1 to phase 2 of the project, and phase 2 just is the moment the interior finishes and and some of the final painting that kind of has to overlap between phase 1 and phase 2. That needs to happen here. It'll roughly be that last week of November, first week of December, that temporary interior wall start to come down and that will open up. So roughly the end of December, I would say beginning of January, probably roughly around the first year, that transition will be happening. I think it's going to dictate that our finishes happening in the evening, so we can just be open during the day, and allow that to open sooner. So the exact timing that we're working out right now, so you got to talk players involved in that from the sites. The other couple of outstanding things are really just coordinating some art items out there on the south. There's a sculpture that goes in. There's kind of a circular pad out there for that. And you'll pretty significant piece as part of the trail park in general. And then you'll probably notice some odd places in the concrete sidewalks that right now probably look like accidents or problems. That's actually part of the art as well. So there will be some tiles installed there by the artists. But the timing of that, obviously with the weather, you can't install that in freezing weather. So it's really be pushing that in more of a spring installation. So those will be finished up as part of that in spring. But that will not keep the south entrance from opening. So but it'll just be something to be aware of as people are passing through that area. In terms of Noblesville, phase 1 is done for all intents and purposes, and by that substantially complete, which still means there's a couple of little items to clean up, just to be clear, but it is usable by patrons and staff of the library. So phase 1 is complete on the interior. They're still finishing up some items on the exterior, which is like the fencing around the mechanical yard that's down by the children, small things like that. Again, they don't affect the usage of the space. They're just visually don't look complete. In terms of phase 2, that's the interior work that is happening at that upper level, and then down with the teens area as well as the finishes down below. That ongoing, and that was talking about being completed in April, May timeline at the last meeting. I'll just acknowledge that since again this was issued, we got an updated report from Ferguson, who was the contractor on phase 2. That showed pushing it to November, which of course we all kind of throw our hands up and said, well, what happened? What needs to happen now? That assumed things weren't happening on top of each other. So we need to go, that's kind of the worst case scenario. So now we need to go back and understand how can we overlap with activity to get that pulled back. The biggest thing is going to be the impact of staff, patrons, and making sure that we can still keep the library functional. that's an ongoing conversation we're having right now. So again, not great news, but it's where we're at with some things. The other part is the Indiana ring. I think because of the Solomon group and some things that were happening there to get some things coordinated, that turned out being more challenging than we had hoped. And then there's just some schedule challenges. So initially it was a December install, then it became a January install, and now it's more like a February first week or two install when that's going to happen. So unfortunately, that has gotten delayed through some of that coordination and things that we ran into on that. In terms of then budget, if you look at the budgets for Noblesville, phase one, you actually ended up not using the contingency we anticipated. So actually that ended up giving you money back to do that work from what was originally budgeted. So that was good news. And then that's what's created in phase two, that opportunity to do that work that then is causing some of those extensions of the project timeline potentially. And again, those were all primarily patron facing, so that was upgraded some additional restrooms, things like that. And help on the patron side, but then also help on the maintenance side. A lot of that stuff was over 20 years old in terms of equipment and things like that. So should reduce maintenance for the library staff. So I think that's really all I have just in terms of additional updates. If anybody has any questions.
Kevin, do you anticipate a need to have the Buildings and Grounds Committee meet in the next month or two just to go over anything, or think things with the weather are going to be pretty chill, able to manage it fine?
So there's actually two meetings that I would like to have. One is, I think, knowing that Everett is transitioning out, I think we need to have a conversation just from that transitional management team. And as an example, and I'll just bring this up, that the board will have to reconcile this. You know, Everett has authority to sign change orders, for instance, up to the budget of the project. So we need to deal with, you know, what more the next board meeting or part of the next board meeting, you know, how does that get handled? Just so logistically, we understand the board and us how to handle those types of things. So I think a transitional team meeting needs to happen with that. And then I think facilities and grounds needs to happen to talk through that reconciled budget and where we at as we start to really line down some of these projects. Because we are getting down to, you know, punch lists, things like that, where we start to determine those final costs to finish things. I want to make sure the scenes is dialed in all that. So yes, so I'll only say yes.
No, that's fine. But the transitional team is something that we're going to need to do, 7 of us.
Yeah.
For Buildings and Grounds, right now it's just Craig and I. How soon do you want to talk punch list, substantial completion sort of stuff?
I mean, my thought was somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas, again, prior to the last board meeting of the season. So I know we reached out and said, hey, we probably need to set these up. And just holidays always make setting up is a challenge. So we'll just defer to when the group's availability and find the time in that last week of November, maybe first week of December, whatever works out. There's really nothing that's really, you know, critical, you know, we've got to deal with it quickly, and you just want to make sure that everything, it's good continuity of everything's going on. Like I said, we finish up, it always gets a little, there's always a lot of challenges. We kind of work through conflicts and things, just making sure that we're aware of that.
Right.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too.
Yeah.
All right, I will move on to the board president's report. So I'll turn it over to Tiffany.
Report.
Are we? Sorry.
She said no.
Oh, no report. All right, then we will move on to the director's report.
Okay, so I would like to start by turning it over to Kelsey Sweets, our Director of Communications and Marketing. She's going to talk about season of giving, which is happening here.
Communication, we're going to talk about the season of giving initiative that runs from November 1st through December 31st. This initiative began in 2019, and we instituted this initiative as a way to focus on gratitude and influence, including ourselves. We did this for a few years, and then we joined us as a season of giving Which is trying to shift our focus to the spirit of giving back to the community and trying to take the patrons with giving opportunities. Previously, our goal was to start making drives to not be able to start it. Our donation drive this year, the development of the trustees office of the local trustees of the township trustees office of the law, or something. And so the person we strive and you can drop into that feedback and bring some. And the name of the years, I'm very confident. With about the partnership gratitude, said first responders, right first week, you know, to next Friday, and with the letter you supplied there for the 15, we're working with facilities. We write letters with people, and version, and start people, and these letters. It's not really hard to create this one on the effective. And this is this over. Thank you so much for everyone. They would take any kind of creative project and event if you want to make it for a loved one. And then keep marking. And let's get one. You should not say anything. It's sort of really hard to bring this from the initiative site and as long as the most option this information. The person is and yeah, right now, moving to our completing stand for more information. So it's nice to put together and have them like shopping this holiday season. Over the long for getting the need. Whether you're looking for a book, actually you want to have the book is get for someone or so it's looking and we something that's fun to get them at or even looking experience it, you know, these them passive with the teacher. For example, we can together so there's a market for you.
Any questions?
So how do you, as a staff, select the organizations that you support from the season?
So these are some of the solutions that we shop and just all the opportunity. Last year we had a funding
Thank you so much.
So are there any questions about my director's report that was?
So we had an offer out for CFO.
We did, and unfortunately it did not pan out. We do have 2 more interviews set up with some extremely qualified candidates. So we are feeling good that, yes, fingers crossed. Andre is really excited to turn things over to the president. But thank you, Andre, for coming in and taking the time to carefully review all of the financials because we do appreciate that extra set of eyes.
Is Andre one of the candidates?
No. You've seen that job. No.
I would like to say that the interim team is doing a wonderful job of making sure that we are staying on track with paperwork and all of the reporting requirements that we have as a local unit of government and ensuring that we have all of the I's dotted and T's crossed.
So let's our timeline look at the next
So we have, in-person interviews set up, tomorrow, actually, and so we imagine, thinking it's probably after the first of the year, we'll have some case.
Fingers crossed.
Was the one that fell through, was that on us or was that on them?
So we felt like it was a really positive thing, but they decided to, for their, to go to, this is an individual who was looking at several improvements. But I feel like that is, was appealing, and yes, I think that our new salary ranges allow us to be competitive, in that.
One thing I'll just note, is the library card campaign, and that seems to have gone well, especially among expired cards, with that being a focus with long-range planning, usage. I just wanted to call that out as a positive, that seemed to go well with the concept of the 12 ways to use your library card, something that was successful.
Yeah, it seems to, the library initiative this year did seem to be very successful. We tried several things. Hopefully that will continue on as one of our strategic initiatives.
There's so many of the anecdotes surround people who speak English as a second language,
Yes.
if at all.
Yes.
Do we have staff members who have other language skills?
We do. We have a number of staff who are different languages. It's always something that we're looking to add to our staff. But we don't, I mean, obviously you always more. We're also looking into, I don't know if you're familiar with, I can't remember the tool, but there's a tool for communication where you call the person on the other line to help you to have that conversation, whatever it is. And we're exploring adding that to our toolkit for our librarians. It's the same tool that the Fishers Health Department uses. I just can't give you the name. But we like the idea of using that same tool because of the consistency of experience that people that come here, who also city services would have.
I was just excited to see that the notify me in Overdrive Libby is used for future collection because my list is large.
Yes, one of the things that we're kind of honing in on with the new strategic plan for under the access priority is how do we reduce wait times? How do we make sure that our collections are mapping to what our patrons are looking for? And how do we make those things work together in an effective for everyone?
Anything further? All right, thank you, Edra. Right, I will now move on to other old or new business. So as amended, I will move to the collection development policy. So I'll open discussion on this subject, and last week you all should have received a copy of a proposed action plan from our board secretary, Michelle. So just to get discussion going on that subject, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the action plan that was circulated.
Second.
All right, so to start discussion, we had a really good discussion in the long range planning committee, and I think Michelle's proposed action plan covers the subject pretty well and summarizes some of what we heard. But the underlying fact is that we had a neutral third party contractor come in, and part of what they did for the long range planning work is that they did surveying of patrons. We got a really big response, and our contractor said, yes, this is a statistically significant response we got in terms of reflecting the attitude of the community. And I guess one of the core findings that he made in our discussion based on this data was that there was an overwhelming lack of support for the revisions that we'd made to the collection development policy. So several months have gone by since we paused it. We've discussed it several times, but I agree with the finding here that we should start the new year fresh. So I think that we should go ahead and approve this plan, and I guess any other comments?
I mean, to me, it's significant that the comprehensive strategic planning survey and that collection was not about the CDP. I mean, the timing ended up being overlapping in a considerable way when all this became very public. But But knowing that those issues, when fed into this more comprehensive long-term scope, was interesting to me to see that that's what our community was thinking about and caring about. And then other times, they just want their book. That's it.
You know, as we were talking at the last meeting, we talked about the teen advisory board. Did we ever get any input from them about collection development policy?
We did, I apologize, I did not follow up on it, so I have to do that. Again, I don't know that they were asked specifically about the collection development policy, but the teen advisory board was a focus group for the strategic planning process, and we can get the board the information that we got there, and if any of that touched on the collection specifically.
I think that
Call out the two recent, sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
for the users of the teen zone. And so I think that their input is important as we move forward. One of the things with this, and I think this is a really great start, Michelle. I know you worked really hard on it. I'm wondering under solutions, when it talks about expanding the parenting section, the children's zone, and bringing back the books from the adult stacks, how are we going to continue this, or how are we to have criteria to identify books that go there in the future? Is the plan just to bring back the books and then just let that be? I'm just wondering how that section is defined and developed.
So if you recall, we had a proposal for that in an earlier board meeting, and the intent is for that to continue going forward. And all of that criteria was included in that plan. Gosh, when was that?
Yeah,
That earlier this year, and that did include having that section be something that is popular going forward,
So
based on the criteria in the plan. So
talking about like the children's books, are we talking about the teen books? So in that in the parenting section, that was
the teen section, the nonfiction that is written for teens is being integrated into the general collection and would stay there. The collection that we're creating is the parent-teacher collection in both of our children's departments. And that is a collection that is intended to continue to be developed as we go forward.
It'd be nice to have a little bit more here about that. Just on that
Like an
part.
update.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember which month it was, Molly, that the plan was in the packet? June or July. That was in the June or July board packet. If you want to look back at it, and that's the plan that we're following.
Okay, and that's the parent-teacher section. Okay, and that's mainly nonfiction.
Parent-teacher collection is both nonfiction and fiction in children's books.
In this parenting section?
The parent-teacher collection includes, if you look back at the plan, it details exactly the purpose of the collection, how we're developing it, and the types of materials that are in there.
Okay, because I think that's that's a real good kind of nuance to let people know that, you know, we're going to bring these back, and then this is the criteria as to what will go there.
Yeah, that's all in the plan.
Fantastic. And then with the books that were already moved from the teen zone, that would be the fiction books. When we talk about reshelving them, so it's just, we're just going to bring them all back? Is that what we're planning, Michelle?
Well, I have here as needed, as determined by our librarians for the collection development policy. So, and the proposal I have here is not just to go back to the old collection development policy. As I noted, we did a couple of things with it that make good sense. We added the very robust parenting responsibility section, that stays. We added the new review policy where we have the committee, if the patron disagrees with the librarian opinion. So those are the two additions we all made with consensus. I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, but so in terms of the revision I'm suggesting is broken record, I know, deletion of paragraphs 5 and 6 on pages 3 and 4 and appendices A and B, which is the CHAP section that we paid the $20,000. That is the problematic section, and I'm proposing to delete it.
Okay, that's fine. I'm wondering operationally what that means. Certainly, throwing out the policy, that portion which cost us $20,000 but was constitutionally sound. I'm just wondering what that's going to look like when we operationalize it and move books. So throwing out that portion means X, Y, and Z physically in the library.
And we would need an I can never say this.
Operational response plan.
Operationalization.
So to me, that's a good question. So if the policy were to be, if those elements of the policy were to be promoted, we would anticipate the majority of the books that were moving back. Part of what we do as an ongoing part of collection development is as authors' books change and as they change the audiences they're writing for, sometimes teen series age up into adult, and we've had a few of those already. And we would anticipate there might be a handful of those that would stay in adults. And that would be based on how those authors have developed and changed how they wrote. So we would anticipate that the majority of these books would belong in the high school section based on the criteria and policy.
I guess to reiterate some of our kind of previous discussions and understanding, I know we've learned some things through all this. And I know one of the things we talked about was it that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the OT manga would be aged up?
Correct. Yes. So we've created a new section of manga that would remain in the general collection, and that one's not going to move back. And so there would be some things that would stay, but majority of it would move back.
Yeah, and plus we've got the parental resource section that we're working on too.
Correct. So that would be in the children's collection. We're going to be getting that going, and any children's book that had been moved out that would be moved back would be in that collection.
So as
And the
we
parent.
Correct.
13 section in the manga books, and I know we talked about that how those books are just maybe a little bit culturally different than what we're used to seeing in traditional American books. But I wonder if the criteria that you're using to identify that those manga books are not appropriate in the teen zone, if you're going to apply that to other books, because that's kind of the question. If you can look at your collection and say, these manga books are not appropriate, and there has to be X, Y, or Z reasons. Can those reasons be applied to other books, and would they be applied to other books? As we had a conversation initially, I loved when you had the older teen section, because it makes sense for a lot of people, and a lot of parents might be more active at a really good jokes about parents who are more restrictive. So my question would be, an older teen section, that's something that we could explore. And number two, one of the comments that Dr. Stock was going to give with his presentation was about information that have strong sexual content differently. And if you find something in the policy
that she's got a feedback problem.
Your audio.
If you can just move closer to the microphone, it was cutting you out a little bit.
Okay. So sorry. So I'll go back to the beginning. Where do you want me to go back to?
We switched Dr. Stock.
Yeah. So
what I was saying was we have this older teen section, these manga books who might be a little bit more appropriate for what we'd want to see in a teen section. The criteria that we're using for those books, can they be applied to other books? Because it seems as though there's something maybe visceral, or there's something that you say, this is just a little bit over the edge. And I like the idea of expanding an older teen area. And then with the comments that Dr. Stock would have gotten to, he would have brought out the idea that there are particular types of books that are inappropriate based on sexual content. And if we really wanted to understand the kind of books that could have a negative impact on the minds of children, it would be those kinds of books. But I just think that exploring some type of older teen section would probably speak to parents who are a bit more restrictive. You'll have to ask Bradley Jones to share his thoughts. He might have only emailed that to me, but I think that since we're not going to listen to people, do any listening sessions, and if we're going to go with something on this paper, I think that that's a consideration that has to be made. Comments.
Thanks, high school students. I mean,
So our teen collection is currently level the high school and middle school. Manga is a special case because these are materials that are have a designated audiences that they're, and part of what we do when we're evaluating all the books is I hear what she's saying, and we will. So
Right, so,
but I would not anticipate splitting the teen collection. But we like I said, when we talk about some authors that have gotten into more mature topics into adult, there may be something that we will continue.
so,
What more adult means. I just think that is helpful, especially if we're going to out of this, because we like the idea of moving those manga books. If we can put words around that, and then, oh, by the way,
And those are, again, the manga, the OT manga are identified by the publisher for an intended audience that is identified. So I think that it is more complicated than that. So I think we already do that same processes, but I can't answer this question right now. But I hear you that, like, is there something we can do for the books that kind of fence, right? Like, is it for high school students, or is it really more for college, something like that? Is there something we can do to maybe identify those? And
You think that's something you could put words around?
I don't think that, I think what you're talking about with that trips us up into the policy issue. And I think what we need to do is what we're doing already, which is evaluating books that based on the information we have about them and making sure that they're shelved in a way that makes sense for the intended audience. So again, it's not a question I can resolve, on the fly tonight, but I hear what you're saying. We've heard from this, and I think that's useful. That's helpful to know that's a thing that you're.
we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, and we want to make sure that we apply it fairly so that we're not, violating anyone's rights or, discriminating against any authors. But I just think that, Bradley Jones had really good comments around what subjects are interested. And I love referring to the data from the strategic, and it is really great information. But, it was not intended to collect that data necessarily about the policy. And like the contractor said, it did bubble up. I wish that we could have contracted with him to do a deeper dive and get more information for us. But I do respect that we have some information there. But I think using that data alone not allow for us to understand what other parents are thinking about and what they want. Because I think it was 500 people who said stop book banning and censorship of the 2,400 comments and responses. So that's, it's not the majority of people. But I just
It's 533 comments.
The comments were 533, stop censorship, 222, nothing, no opinion, 200, doing great, 190, expand programming, 137, expand collection, 77, be inclusive, 67, stop the politics,
there were
61, better promote offerings, finish construction. And then 44, continue the new collection development policy.
There were 3,000 surveys sent and 1,800 respondents. So, you know, I'm just looking at this being representative of the entire community. That's all.
That's not right. What you said is not right. We collected 3,109 surveys.
Oh,
We
I'm sorry.
collected 3,109 surveys.
Okay, fantastic. So of those 500 people said that to discontinue, I'm just saying that this may not be representative of the entire community. That's all. I am probably.
And I'll add real quick, a clarifying remark on doing great. I know our contractor indicated that even in the third most popular theme, responses conveyed staff in the library were, quote, doing great, while often separately sharing disappointment in the board. So I would kind of lump those doing greats in with the top 533 to the extent that they're differentiating between the staff and the board.
Yeah,
And just to throw it, just for fun facts, this board was named as a weakness and a threat by the library staff. I want that to be known from the research.
Always at the end, library science and community standards. And I think with people in the room, the people that we serve, the taxpayers, I think most people will agree that's where we are right now. And I'm fine with the survey. I'm fine with moving forward, but I just always say that we're missing talking to and getting the voice of people in our community. Average household pays $100 a year toward the library. We serve a lot of families, and every family did not do this survey, so that's fine. But just know that we're not listening to some people, and that's the feedback that I get overwhelmingly, is that we're not listening to everybody. That's fine. We will do whatever you guys want to do, but just know that we're going to get feedback on people who don't feel listened to, and I'm fine with that. I just want to say that.
I would just like to say again, with respect, that library science incorporates into it. It is not, these are not opposing forces. This is part of the work of a public library is to serve, and that means entitlement. And I don't want it to seem like these things are opposing forces, because they are. We all have to work together to make sure that this library serves our entire community. And this is part of it. This is the heart.
Yeah.
So not everybody's going to be happy. You're right. Not everybody's going to be happy with whatever we do. And I think we just need to keep listening. So thank you.
That's fine. Thank you.
See?
So sorry. She couldn't get you box.
If everyone please kind of keep quiet, be quiet, so everyone can hear and the board can keep working. I appreciate that. Hey, audience, it's a public meeting. I need the audience to be respectful, be quiet. I know this is a very tough issue and emotions are high, but the board needs to do its work now. Thank you all. All right. So I guess just a question about how to operationalize this. We've got the action plan proposals. Maybe Michelle, you could weigh in with the intent to be that perhaps the staff presents a written policy pursuant to this, actual collection development policy for ratification at the next meeting, or how do you view that going?
We might look for timing expectations as to how long it would take. But I think in terms of the operation plan, address, you use the library science standards that are in place.
Right, so my understanding from the action plan was that the only change to the policy is to remove the sections that are currently paused. And what that would signal to us is to start the process of determining books that were moved that without those sections would normally be shelved, and frankly, it's all in teen zone. And that would be the process we would start. And I don't know how long that process would take because we have a lot of priorities right now.
Right.
And I don't know how high that priority of moving those books back would be. That may be something we would ask the board. Is that a higher priority than the parent teacher collection development? Because we're working on that too. So, but I think we could report on our progress toward that.
And I think part of that plan that would be helpful to see is a key component of this action plan is to have public information in the community about the responsibility of parents in this library. That has been for 2 years, that has been the brick wall that the kids is that it is about parenting and it is about parental responsibility. And we have policies, multiple policies that include language around that. So I'd like to see a full-blown communication campaign from our very talented communication team that will emphasize those points. And even I think the doctor who spoke of the importance of parenting related to impulse control. So it sounds like it's on our side.
And I don't think anyone's questioning these parenting responsibilities. I mean, we all believe parents should have that final responsibility. But what we're saying is, what are the boundaries? What are the guardrails that we have to? So there's no guardrails. So does the public zoo operate that way? They just get rid of all the guardrails, say parents, just keep your kids out of the Lions area over there. Like, no, we have. Do we have an idea of the guardrails? That's all we're asking, Michelle. Why do you get so mad when I just say, what are the guardrails? All I'm doing is asking the question. Why are you so mad?
I find your analogy ridiculous.
Okay, so give me the guardrails. That's all we're asking. What are the guardrails? Okay, so
Responsibility.
that's all I want to know. So there are no guardrails except for the parents. So anything goes. Anything goes.
Collection in the library is organized into areas that are based on intended audiences for books. And that is a broad category. And then for children, for each reader, they have the choice of what in that broad category they can choose. We don't put, until recently, we don't put children's books in the adult collection. We put children's books in the children's collection, but not every parent is interested in every topic that we have in the children's collection. So what we do is provide these general collections, and then the parents decide which of those books are right for their children. So the guardrails exist in how these collections are developed, who these books are intended for, and we're never going to have a collection that is exactly right for every parent.
No one's asking.
So that's the guardrails.
So when you say it's developed,
yes.
who develops?
The part of, I think when Tiffany talks about library science and community standards, I think that the piece that's missing there is that community standards are not what Micah Beckwith thinks. Community standards are not what Michelle Payne thinks. Community standards are not what Andre Miksha thinks. Community standards are broad. And what we as librarians do is we look at the universe of things that are available. We look at our community, and we build a collection that we feel has materials that represent the breadth of points of view, the breadth of ideas for everyone in our community. And what that means is that this book is going to be absolutely wrong for you, but it's going to be absolutely right for Andre. And that's part of what the public library does. And so by not making those value judgments, we have collections that have things that not everybody agrees with. And I disagree with your zoo analogy because the zoo will let anybody in. Parents are. But so I think it doesn't make sense to me either.
Well, I think there's a moral obligation by any public facility to have a standard of safety. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and I think that
Agree with that.
as a public building, we have policies in place that guide who is here and when they're here. But we also are a public building and we are limited in what we can do.
That's great.
We don't.
You kind of answered the question. I mean, you said it's your job as the librarian to create the guardrails.
And I think guardrails is the wrong word.
Well, I mean,
Because what you say guardrails,
Yeah.
you're applying your
Well, you're not
personal
gonna-
moral judgment,
so would you?
and that's not what we do.
Okay, let me, like, hypothetical, I mean, you're not gonna let a Playboy magazine fall into the kids section. Is that right? I mean, is that right? Is that right? No?
We don't collect them.
So,
Okay,
so I,
everybody, please no more further comments.
how would that, like, let's say.
Into these. Because,
Yeah, you.
well, if you find.
Somebody stop me.
We apply the six in the collection development see
Okay.
to what we bring to the list. So, and again, we have sections that have materials that are intended for readers in certain groups, but not every 7-year-old is ready for the same content.
Sure.
Not every 17-year-old is ready for the same content, and that is a decision. And that's.
Got
That's really. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what it is, right? Yeah, there you go.
So
Yes, that will. You got it. Right, excuse me, audience. We don't need.
Excuse me, guys. The board needs to continue doing its work. You can't keep having comments from the public right now. We had an open hearing. I really want everyone to behave and touch each other. Okay, all right, so.
Oh, I just wanted
Tiffany?
to have a quick question. Well, I just want to make a comment. So I was listening to what Edra was saying about like the collection. And I think that, you know, we all agree that we want robust books and everything covered and serve everybody. And because that's what our taxpayers are paying for, because everybody pays for the library. But I think Micah was kind of hitting on it, kind of the criteria for placement of materials beyond the publishers and the author's intentions. So I think that's where things kind of get a little bit gray is, you know, we have this robust, large, wonderful collection. We get 1,500 pieces of new material a month. We're spending what, $800,000 next year for materials. You know, we have all of these things coming in, but do we have a criteria for placement beyond what the authors and publishers tell us?
Yes. Next question.
Fantastic.
I
Added to this.
hear you.
I'm so sorry.
What did you say? I didn't hear the last part. We didn't hear.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I said, and I was going back to what Micah said about the placement. So we get 1,500 pieces of material a month. We're programmed to spend about $800,000 on new materials next year. But do we have a criteria for the placement of materials beyond what the publishers and the author's intentions are? So I think that's where we run into things locally, is that the publishers and the authors are dictating where these books go. Sometimes our parents and don't agree with it. So that would be the to me, I think that's the crux of a lot of this, is we've got publishers and authors deciding where books go, and that
That is not the only criteria that we use. We have provided repeatedly the criteria that we use when determining what is a middle school book, what is a high school book, what is a children's book, and we use professional reviews. We use other sources like that to develop these collections. That's part of what librarians are trained to evaluate these books. And if a parent does not agree, that's fine. That's why we have the customer consideration process in the policy. And I think, to Michelle's point, it was a good change to add in that additional step. If the parent or whoever is objecting to the book disagrees with the professional judgment of the librarians, then it does go to the board and to the community to have a conversation. So I think that's all built in to the work that we do to make sure that our collections and services will fulfill the needs of our community. It's not simply the publisher says this, therefore it goes there. There's more to it than that. But we have to go to library school first.
When we started that, that was how a lot of this was defined. And that's what got us to adding the additional language to the policy, was that oftentimes when we had a request for reconsideration, the answer was the publisher and the author says this is a children's book. It was in the right place. And I know that we have language that will, give us, a better process there. But I just think it's important, just because at the end of the day, nobody's going to say that we can't. We're always going to err on the side of library money to get books. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the placement. And we will do whatever the majority of the board wants to do. But I just think that there's parents who would like to see more restrictive things done, things to identify books, but it's all about the placement. And, at the end of the day, I just think that we need to be prepared to have that conversation with folks, that because it's all about the placement.
I guess I'll add that, I mean, it's this board's continuing obligation and duty to keep looking at the policy, keep making it better. I'm sure our professional staff keeps improving how they look at books, new sources, new stuff. So I guess this is not just unintended closed book. This is a step in the in the direction I feel our community is telling us based on this survey.
So we've even talked about, instead of doing listening sessions, doing a broader survey, pushing something out electronically. I mean, are we able to do something like that too? I mean, are there other people? How many card holders do we have, Edra?
Over 80 some thousand, I think. 80 some thousand. 80,000.
So about 80,000 households.
I don't have that information. No, okay. But yeah, it is, yes, it's about that. I think that we're kind of going back, Tiffany, because when we talked about this, the question came up, what is the question we have? I think we're still there. Yeah, it's like, what are the questions that we're asking people? Because the surveys that we've done, the satisfaction survey that we do every year does ask about collection and are satisfied with the collection. So we can do a survey that we talked about, if you recall, at the lunchtime community. What are we looking for? What is the data that we think we can get from a survey? And so I think that those are questions that we're going to require more time than we have right now. But we are constantly looking for that feedback. We include input about the collection in our longitudinal study, the survey that we do every year. So we'll have more data from that.
But we also talked about how talking about the collection development policy, how that can be polarizing for people, and how adding those questions to other surveys could taint some of the other responses, and how it could be beneficial to do a survey that only focused on the collection, kind of to the point of, are your thoughts on, do you favor our current collection development policy? If we were to do this, would you want to see this, of the books who've been moved? And if they're moved back, do you want to see identifiers on them? Do you favor an older teen section? I feel like we could throw some.
I would just like to comment that the data that we received in the survey that we did for strategic planning indicated that we're trying to solve a problem that does not exist. There is no broad-based concern with the library's collection. These are very specific concerns from specific people. And we have a mechanism for that through the request for reconsideration process. Is that not what you took from the survey? That what Garrett said is there was no data that indicated that there was a broad concern across our community with the library's collections as they stand now. So when we put all of this time and discussion and effort into solving a problem that doesn't exist, or that is a problem that is just to a very specific element of our community, that there's but it's not broad. So how much time and treasure and input do we put into this? And what that survey told us, and it is a statistically significant sample, is that concern was not one that rose to the top from the respondents to that statistically significant survey. So that's my question is, are we focusing on the right thing? Or to your point, Tiffany, you made a great point of saying that we're always going to have people who are unhappy with things the library does. That's just the nature of human beings and public service is you're never going to satisfy everyone. But our data tells us that this is not a broad concern among, but it is a very important and meaningful concern to the people who come and voice it. And that's why we can help you if you find certain kinds of books or avoid. That's what we do.
And I'll add, we are not unresponsive to the concern. I agree, it's not a wide-ranging concern, but we've been so responsive. We've integrated our nonfiction collections. We have created a high school, middle school section. We have created a parent-teacher reference section. We are continually responding to these concerns. And I don't view what we're might be doing here as completely erasing any work we've done, because that's just not true at all. Any further comments or discussion before we move to a roll call vote?
Could we just have clarity about what the motion was? I know when you originally made the motion, I seconded, I understood we were kind of moving Michelle's proposal forward. And I just want clarity for purposes of minutes of this meeting and for guidance, should it pass very specific action points of what an aye vote means in moving it forward.
All right, so I will accept any friendly amendment or comment on this, but the intent of my original motion was to approve the plan set forth and moving forward the plan set forth in the action plan. I view this as we adopt the action plan, and then hopefully by next meeting we have a new draft of the collection development policy from staff based on their understanding of what this action plan was that we could ratify. Does that make sense to everybody?
Weren't we talking about putting more words around operation? Wasn't that?
Sorry, Tiffany, can hear you.
Wasn't that part of the early conversation that we were going to put more words around like operationalizing it and what it would look like? So I'm focusing on the solutions part here, because is that what we're approving, the solutions? Or are we approving the revisions?
So my intent was to approve the entire plan.
So we're a team of what, 6 people? Bill has said nothing. Andre has said nothing.
I third. I second. I don't know. Move it forward, please.
Right, well, seconded the motion, Tiffany, and I think we deserve, and the public deserves clarity on what we're doing today. I think the document that Michelle put forward laid out the background, laid out the analysis, the rationale, revisions, solutions, how it ultimately is. To me, it is a missive that I wish I had authored. But I think what we need to do is have, if anything, break it down into motions. And I think the clearest, simplest motion is first to convert those paused portions to deleted portions as a motion. We vote on that, we move on. A lot of the other parts of this action plan are prospective. This is what we're going to aspire to. This is how we should think about your comments about the information campaign. And how the parenting, that is a continuing conversation that we're going to have, but we can at least send the message that, no, we hear you, we understand, we see it, we are taking the pause and saying, yes, we're making that permanent, as permanent as any of our policies are, because we are always a work in progress.
Okay, Michelle, is that consistent with your understanding of your action plan?
Absolutely.
All right, then I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. I guess you seconded, so.
And so I would share, so the motion being to convert paragraphs 5 and 6 on pages 3 and 4 in appendices A and B to remove them from the current collection development policy.
Yes. Second. Okay, you already.
Yeah, it was a revision.
That's amending the motion.
Crystal clear, that's what's going.
So if there's nothing further, I'll move to a roll call vote.
No.
Super. Tiffany, we need your vote.
Sorry, I could not hear anything. I'm gonna abstain.
You're gonna abstain? Bill Cameron,
Aye.
Andre Nixon,
Aye.
Michelle Payne, Craig Seaver.
Aye, the motion carries. So I guess next step, could we have a draft CVP that reflects this by the next meeting?
Yeah.
All right, terrific, thank you. All right, so then do we have any follow-up motions under that heading on the agenda? All right, there's no follow-up motions. I will move to. Let's see. All right, looks like Tiffany, you asked that legal counsel be added to the agenda. Is there anything you'd like to say on that matter?
Sure, in light of that a lot of our legal plan moving forward was Edra calling folks that she's familiar with working with, kind of as an ad hoc basis, and I don't think that we nailed anything down. And the thought came to me that we might want to nail down some really good legal counsel over the next probably 6 months. Just throw it out there, but certainly whatever the board wants to do.
I guess I understand the status quo on this is that we don't have an official board attorney to the extent that we have someone sitting here with us today or at our meetings. We kind of have a network of attorneys, and I think I understand even Ann Poindexter said she would respond on a case-by-case basis to the director.
Right.
So I guess and then she can refer, like I know reason Mike Cabosi for construction and such. So I thought how we left it was we're going to keep doing that with the being open to making a more permanent relationship, but given our kind of prior interactions and experience with the council, that we're a little hesitant to do that right now at this stage. Is that still everyone's feelings, or any revised thoughts on that? Or is that an accurate statement?
I've heard that Maslamani and Jeter are interested in potentially being counsel. So, I mean.
I did follow up with them.
Yeah.
And I never got a response.
So I'm not sure why. When did you do that?
When we were, I think probably September, whenever we were, when I was contacting all of the original respondents to see if they were still interested.
So I talked to them in the last week.
Yeah, it's been.
Yeah, and they expressed interest, so it's worth a phone call.
That's the prerogative of the board. You want to engage.
And would the scope of that be just the full board attorney, or what are they looking to do?
Well, I think we could certainly explore. I don't, there wasn't any scope that he laid out, so he said if you guys need legal counsel, we'd be interested in.
Would you talk to Chris or Maureen?
Mario.
I contacted this.
You
Because I
contacted,
used to be
okay.
on the website.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
So maybe I need to reach out.
Yeah. So,
What do you guys want to, I mean, what are your thoughts? What would you like for me to, how would you like for me to?
I guess speaking as one board member, I'm kind of comfortable with our current arrangement. I guess if there's some need that arises and it would fit their wheelhouse, I guess we could consider doing a trial run with them on something, but I guess I'm not ready to vote here today. Yet they're our new board attorney.
no, I think bringing him in or just having a conversation is the next step. I don't think we need to make a decision by any means because, but you said Chris used to be the librarian.
Chris was on the record.
Oh, he was on the library. Okay. Yep.
So maybe they could send us some sort of a summary of what the rates are, what they specialize in, just so if something's in their wheelhouse, we could consider them.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can reach out.
Reach out.
But I'll
Okay, yeah.
Especially as we go.
Any other? Oh. Tiffany, we can't hear
You're
you.
cutting out again, so.
Going through the search process and bringing on a new director. I think just having just strong legal counsel available during this time is a smart move.
Guess are there?
And I can't hear you guys right now.
Okay, so I guess, is there any motions on the subject or?
Necessarily need a motion, but especially for just saying, hey,
Is there consensus from Tiffany? All you could hear was the announcement that was closing. So you didn't miss anything. It was just the closing announcement.
Oh. Okay, sorry.
That's why we're not using microphones, because when anything goes through the system, you can't hear anything on Zoom. So that's what. So where we are, is there consensus for me to reach out to Messalani and Jeter to see if they have a schedule of feeds and type of what they do to provide this additional information?
Yeah, that sounds appropriate to me based on discussion.
Okay, so I can.
The intent, my thoughts are that we at least have some legal counsel. So as we go through the search, bring a new director on board so that they've got somebody that they can work with. If there's questions that come up, and kind of get us through the search process. I think that this is not the time for us to be scrambling and kind of ad hoc. Certainly, Edra, if you were staying with the relationships that you have, it would be a non-issue. But as we go through this period of change.
Any other thoughts or comments? Nothing further. I'll go ahead and move on to the resignation of the director and plans for recruitment. I think Michelle, you put this on the agenda, so I'll start with you.
Sure. I asked for this to be added to the agenda because I want to discuss as a group how that was handled. And I'll go ahead and say it was I believe it to have been handled very poorly. So I would like to have a discussion about that, about the facts that happened. I'd like to hear from Edra about that. And if you're okay, Edra, we can start there.
So I would like to make a general.
Yes, please.
I really am sad to leave this really great HEPL team and all of the people that we serve here in Fishers and Noblesville. I do want everyone to know that I have a longstanding and really deep connection to the Anderson Public Library, which is where I'm going as their next director. And I started my career there 6 years ago, right at a library school. And you always have kind of a heart for your first like real love. We love them. So when the opportunity came to devote the energy and expertise I have to serving my neighbors, I live in Anderson, and I want to make a difference, and I tried to do that here. And I believe very strongly that everyone deserves a great library, and I want to do that for my community. Right? I really appreciate the support that the Noblesville and Fishers community have shown the library in the 12 years I've been here. And I am so proud of what we've accomplished together. It's a wonderful team. We have wonderful community partners. And I really deeply appreciate all of the really wonderful things that have happened. This has been a tough 2 years, but I think that maybe we're kind of getting a path to work through it. And I'm very proud of it. I will say, to answer Michelle's question, I did let the board know last Thursday that I would be leaving. However, it was not all influenced on where I was going. So I did request that the announcement be held until tonight. And I'm disappointed that that was not, and I think that's what Michelle was talking.
Right, so do we want to discuss the circumstances? Tiffany, you wrote the press release and wanted it released on the day after Edra told us the news. So do you want to address that and your thought process behind that?
Sure. So, and I completely apologize. I was reached out to, media reached out to me, and in the past, when we've not gotten ahead of things, things have looked badly for us. Edra certainly just shared that we'd received your resignation, did not share anything else to know that, you know, you'd resigned and support you. That would be no disruption in service to the library, because those were the things that I felt were important to the library, and definitely did not want to have a media circus as we've seen over the last 3 months about different.
Tiffany, we're losing you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is this better? I'm so sorry. So definitely the media reached out to me, and I wanted to give the opportunity to preserve the reputation of the library so that our patrons and taxpayers and stakeholders would know that we support EDRA, that there'd be no disruption in services, and that there was nothing nefarious going on in the background, that, you know, we weren't pushing you out or anything like that. And that was the intent, was to get ahead of the media and preserve the reputation.
And that was after you heard from Edra and 2 board members that we were not in support of releasing it until tonight.
So I sent it out for 24 hours, and it was a full, I got a call from the media, and what happens when we don't get into stuff, go sideways. That was the intent. That's all. That was the intent. Was it for it to not be a media circus? Certainly the library, the community are very, very important. And it was important for the community to know that we didn't ask Edra to leave. Certainly got a new board, full serving. There's a real.
Tiffany, we're losing you again.
I don't know what I can do.
When you hear from media, one is never obligated to respond.
Correct.
Do you feel that you were obligated to respond because you heard from a media member?
Michelle, this is where we are. The media reached out to me as board president. I did what I could to preserve the reputation of the library. Did not say, I didn't share anything beyond what I knew. It's important to preserve the reputation of the library, that the community know that there was nothing nefarious going on. Is that fine? Is that clear? Did that come through? Because we all, I mean, the collection development policy is a very small part of the Edra has the full support of the board. She has nothing but a supportive board working with her, and I'm actually moving on.
All right, so I guess, I mean, I've got a few issues with what happened. First, after all Edra's service, she did request that we give, I mean, I feel like as a courtesy, she gave us a 1 week heads up about what she was doing. And then what we did with that courtesy was essentially run to the media. And I think this board needs a higher level of professionalism. And if our director is going to give us courtesy, I don't think we should essentially kind of stab her on the back with that. And I guess 2, if I can finish, and 2, I mean, this full board unanimously made a policy that the board speaks through the full board, not individual members. And while that was signed as the board president, it kept referring to we as the board were doing this, we as the board were doing that, we as the board. And I think any reasonable person reads that, signed by the president and released to the public, it means the board was saying that. And as far as I can tell from here, only 1 member of the board put that out, and the director and I know at least 2 other members of the board said no way. So I do not read that as consistent with the policy we enacted. Yes, those are my thoughts on the subject.
Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
So I want to have a little bit more of a discussion, because
I think that, I think that we're good. I think that we've had a full discussion.
No, I'm not done, Tiffany. I reserve the right to continue the discussion because I'm gonna switch gears a little bit here about this, okay? How many people need to give up on this library before this board gets a hint that things are not going well for this board? We've had 2 law firms quit, 2 CFOs, 2 deputy directors, and now the one employee for whom we have a direct relationship, Edra, our fearless leader for 12 years, is leaving. We have a huge gaping hole to fill, and I'm concerned about how we're going to fill it. More so, I'm concerned about the lack of trust and transparency on this board and the message that that sends to the leadership we are lucky to have left. And I don't want to see all of them follow Edgar out the door. So we need to send a clear message that we are correcting this course. We are going to do things differently. We are going to pursue ambitious goals for this library system. And so regretfully, I have to move to, let me see, suspend our bylaws and revisit the officer slate. And I nominate Craig Seavey as president and Tiffany Ditlison as vice president, the same as I suggested back in August.
I will help you out, Michelle. I will, since I will be resigning effective the 31st of December. So you will be fine. You will be fine.
So I propose that you serve as vice president because I propose this effective immediately. Because as you shared with the media, we are seeking a new director immediately. And so we have to start doing things differently now.
No, we certainly are doing things differently because we are communicating to the community about things. We are not hiding from the community. I've got nothing but positive feedback whenever we put out information about the open door law violation, about things that are occurring. When we are quiet and things are hidden, and when people are allowed to make inferences in the community and social media, that's when we lose. That's when we lose. Clear communication is what is best. And you know, I will double down on doing what is best for the community. No one is in the community.
Well, if we cannot trust the community, we have trust among this group, and we do not have, I will say, will not speak on behalf of anyone else.
That release was sent out on the HEPL email to everybody on this board, and only 2 people responded. I think trust is when people need to trust their HEPL, people need to check their email more regularly. That's trust. Trust is being an alert.
You're the only one who does not use the library email.
Members are not alert and they are not checking their HEPL emails at regular intervals. That press release set before it went out and only 2 people responded. That says a lot. That says a lot about how people feel and how
the rest of us have to intentionally check a separate email inbox.
So sorry.
The 2 people who responded said, don't send it.
And the third question, why there was a rush to do so when she had requested to make the public announcement herself tonight.
And I'm telling you, we had to get ahead of it. I apologize. We had to get ahead of it. I stand by what I did.
Kennedy.
I will comment because I feel like this affects me with, as a professional, we often have people who request for us to hold announcements about their personal plans. And the result of having this press release out without information about this were a deluge of media requests for what's happened. Did they force you out? Are you quitting because of the policy? What's happening? What's going on? And had we waited, I feel like we could have done a joint announcement that made clear to everyone where I was going, why I was leaving. And so, and also for me personally, it put me and the library that I'm going to in a very awkward position because it was, I mean, you didn't have to be Albert Einstein to see that I'm residing in HEPL at the same time that the people who know that and so I hear what you're saying, Tiffany, and I totally get you that we've had that not getting in front of things can be difficult, but in this case, I feel like I made a reasonable request for a very good reason, and I am disappointed that it was not fulfilled. The reason that we wanted to issue that press release is because we were notified that you had already told people that I was, that you had shared that information widely. And so we saw no other recourse than to get it out officially for exactly the reason that you say, is that if they hear it from you, it's sort of official, but not really. Whereas if there's chatter, then that's less official. So that it was all just not a great situation. And I think it's important to have this discussion so that we can avoid that in the future.
So I guess I think we need to get our best foot forward with looking for a new director. So I guess I'll go ahead and second the motion. Any further discussion, questions, comments on the motion before we move to a roll call? I guess I'll move for a roll call vote.
Rebecca,
No.
Judy Randall, abstain. Tiffany Goodwinson,
No,
I'm sorry. Bill Kimball,
Aye.
Andrea Misha,
I'll explain my vote. I'm not sure we've ever done that here. Ultimately, I'm explaining my vote because I had split with, so much of our discussions in the last months have been about the blocks. Oh, it's Michelle, Andre, Greg voting this way, and we had the other four that way. And the vote to make this officer slate that exists currently was 5-2. I voted for Tiffany to be president, but I vote yes on this motion.
Michelle Payne,
Yes.
right. Francine,
Aye. The motion carries. All right, so I believe that's for adjournment. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So move.